Welcome to Control Plus, a series where we explore how tech is reshaping work, leadership, and the people behind it. I'm Ruwais. I lead the tech recruitment practice at Michael Page. Spent the last 6 years working closely with the tech community across the Middle East. This series is about sharing the kind of conversations I've been lucky to have in my role with people building, leading, and navigating real change. In this Control Plus leadership series, I'm joined by Peter Jamieson, a tech leader with experience at IBM, Microsoft, Neom, and others. Someone who's seen how AI has moved from hype to something far more real. Together, we'll get into what AI and leadership really look like today, how roles are changing, what teams need, and what leaders are actually dealing with on the ground. We kept it long form on purpose to actually get into the nuance behind the headlines, with stories and insights you can take straight into your own work. Let's get into it. Right, Peter. So we've obviously been speaking off camera, and you've mentioned AI has been there for quite some time now. But for users like myself, it's only really been usable in the last, let's say, 3-4 years, right? There was an instance where I think it was 3-4 weeks ago. I was in the office and we have Copilot and we have a big monitor. So it was my workstation, and I was in one of the, you know how in Windows you can have half. One of the sides, it was Copilot, and the other one, I think I was automating an email or proofreading one of my emails. So my colleague was walking past and she saw it, and she just made one comment. She said something along the lines of, "Oh, can you do something yourself?" Right? That was one.
I can make coffee. I can always make coffee. I can do that still. That's still a function of, thankfully something I still do.
Fair, actually, I should have said that. But going back, there was another instance where Ian, quite well, he's on a rampage at the moment creating AI agents.
Doesn't surprise me. He's a rampaging type.
So within Copilot, he's off creating agents to automate similar workflows. And this was 2 weeks ago where she showed one of the workflows to us, and automatically one of my colleagues was shocked almost. And he was like, Jesus, when do we actually start losing our jobs? So it stuck with me because there's an element of fear, right? I don't know if it's justified or not, but there's an element of fear, or fear of the unknown, so to speak. Why do you think that is?
I think marketing has a lot to do with it. Look, we've lived for years with the concept that the machines are going to take over one day. We just didn't really have a plausible reason of how that would happen. Space Odyssey, those that are a fan of all of the sci-fi films of yonks ago, RoboCop even to some extent. We've always kind of had that fascination. Hollywood's always had that fascination that machines will ultimately take over the world and we will be the servants in one form or another. I personally blame Keanu Reeves. I think it is actually all Keanu Reeves' fault. He's a nice guy, but I think it's all his fault. Anyway, but it comes back to a little bit of a few things. One, it is a little bit of the unknown. And what Sam Altman at OpenAI did, and if regardless of what your opinions are of ChatGPT, whether it's a good, bad, or indifferent product, the thing that they did really, really well is they managed to market consumable AI that actually felt like something that would pass the Turing test. The Turing test being that fable, or not so much fable, but that test that if you have a conversation with a computer and you believe it to real, then it must be real. And I think it was the very first time that we saw something that fundamentally went, whoa, this feels a bit real. This actually now feels something tangible. And it's progressed so rapidly. I mean, you think OpenAI is less than 10 years old. It's still very much an infancy company, as are a lot of the other AI organizations that have opened. But to your point, AI has been with us for a long time. In fact, arguably, and the laugh and joke about this is that this even started before the turn of the century. Gulliver's Travels. If you ever seen Gulliver's Travels?
No.
Right. Okay. Gulliver's Travels. Maybe I'm showing my age now, but Gulliver's Travels. Admittedly, the rest of the story maybe doesn't make too much sense for this analogy, but Gulliver's Travels predicted a machine that would be able to help write and help scholars with their work, and it would use mechanical parts. It would use stamping from pieces of wood in order to help the creation of various different manuscripts. So, and this is well before the turn of the century. So, fast forward a few years, and then we start getting into the early 1940s, where we start seeing various different machine arguably machine learning systems, primarily chess systems, making an inroad. So players playing against the computer, and the computer seemingly being able to make some decisions, being able to make a strategic choice about how it's going to do something. The concepts of those original tools are as same today as they were back then. They are mathematical calculators. They are mathematical calculators making a calculation based on a probability. In the chess systems, it's a probability of strategy. In ChatGPT terms, it's a probability of what the next word it needs to say is.
Sorry, next word, who needs to say?
That ChatGPT needs to say. So if you give it, if the best way to describe when you're having a conversation with any AI, anything that's an LLM, is it's basically a function of what if, again, I'm going to date myself now, but if you had a Nokia mobile phone back in the day when Nokias were bricks and were indestructible and had a 20-year battery life, you had T9. And T9 was how we all spoke, right? You would kind of type on the keyboard, it would start predicting the word that you were writing based on whatever the last letter was that you wrote, right? So if you were writing hello, by the time you got to kind of the second, the second L or even the first L, it already kind of said, maybe you want to say hello. And you could press yes, and it would help write that wording. In a more sophisticated manner, that's pretty much how an LLM theoretically works, but it's doing it a little bit more sophisticated. It's using various different techniques in order to get that prediction better and more accurate and sound reasonable. T9, if you ask T9 just to keep on rambling, it would probably come up with, hello, I am doing something but don't know what, and it would just, it would make no sense. Yeah. What LLMs do and what they're very good at is being able to make some sense of the context of the sentence that it's making to you. So hopefully when you get it, you look at it and go, yeah, that makes a bit of sense. So go back into your original question. So why are we kind of getting afraid of it? Because this thing's probably the closest we've got to science fiction for in our lifetimes. This is right now we're living in Hollywood.
Didn't we feel that way when Siri came out though? Yeah,
and now we look at Siri and sorry to any Apple fans out there, sorry, but Siri feels outdated now. It really does, and that's only a couple of years. And remember, Siri had a human voice.
Yeah.
That's the scary part, right? So how fast have we moved? So Siri had a human voice and, recorded thousands of hours of various different prompts in order to get Siri to have a voice. Now I can go onto SynthFlow and I can mimic pretty much anyone's voice I want to. In fact, if you fancy a pay rise later on, I'm sure I can get to mimic Ian's voice and we can make a very convincing call to HR department.
We'll save that for later. But just going back to my original question then, in terms of hesitation, have you seen that in your network? Or
yes.
You have?
Yeah, tons.
Why is that fear of failure? Is that fear of missing out, even fear of losing their jobs? What is it actually?
I think for everyone it's a little bit different. For everyone it's a challenge of, are they at risk of what's coming forward? And if they're at risk of what's coming forward, are they in a position to do something about it? Look, technology's always moved forward, right? And anyone who's worked in the technology space, we're used to relatively rapid change. So for technologists specifically, I think AI poses slightly less of a threat because we've seen things come and go. Blockchain, that was a good one. Came and went. Again, dating myself, mini disk. Remember mini disks? Yeah, they came away. So we've seen technologies come and go. Some have stuck around. Some the original promise, the original marketing, and I go back to blockchain promised. The supply chain revolution, where it's never really happened. It's kind of happened in small areas, but it's never really taken over the world. So we've been used to these things coming up, and we've been used to some of the marketing speak. But for a large proportion of the population, blockchain is Bitcoin. A lot of people know what Bitcoin is. A lot of people don't really understand what Bitcoin is. They kind of know it's a cryptocurrency, but how do I buy it? How do I trade it? And it's coming, and we live in the UAE, so crypto is a bit more of an accepted term than it is in other places. But it's still, and if I asked my grandmother about it, she would look at me and go, bit what now? So, it's still not right out there. AI, if I asked her the same question about ChatGPT, she knows what ChatGPT is. So she is very versed in what it is. But she's versed in what it is, but doesn't know how to use it. And that's where your fears start coming in. So that fear of
the unknown.
Fear of the unknown. And it's, this thing is progressing at such a rapid rate, or perceived rapid rate. And again, this is where the marketing's coming in a little bit. It is progressing, but maybe not quite as much as
what they're saying.
They're saying.
Yeah,
and I think there is a little bit of iteration on iteration, trying to make it look a little bit nicer, and you lick a paint on the same thing that was there before. And that's some of the criticisms that have been levied to ChatGPT 5, for example. That's certainly something that's been very heavily pushed, and certainly in my socials that I've seen, that it's a good improvement, but it's not a leap forward. It's an incremental step forward. So when we look at it in those terms, I think people are looking, going, it's moving very quick, so I can't keep up. Or I've already missed the boat, so if I dig my head in the sand and just pretend it's not there, it might go away. So these are all reasons why I think we start seeing the hesitation. I think the final hesitation is where do I start? And we can't go a day without seeing a new LLM, a new AI model coming out, or a new AI tool. And you go, well, is this the one I start with? Or do I wait for tomorrow for the next one to come out? Or actually, did I miss the boat 4 months ago when this other thing came out?
Yeah. So I want to actually get to the point of where do we start. But whilst you were speaking, I was thinking, you've obviously led multiple transformations throughout, right? Whether it be an ERP, whether it be, I don't know, the new best thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Within a complex organization, there's always an element of change management when something big like this happens. With AI, is the resistance to change and fear the same?
It's a really good question. I think it stems from the same kind of culture.
Yeah.
So if I look at a lot of the large-scale projects I've done in my time, whether it be through IBM, whether it be through Microsoft, Neon, even to a lesser example, the projects, the technical element of the project is not massively unique. It's a new finance system. It's a new, delivery mechanism, whatever it may be. It's a new system. But where the resistance comes in is the resistance to changing the process. So I've used this term multiple times. SAP, despite the branding is, for me at least, is not a technology company. It's a process company. It's a process company that has for years invested in looking at the very best process that can basically drive businesses efficiently with scale, and it's very good at doing it. And as you want to expand into new countries, you can bring new packs in, and effectively it allows you to expand your business. Now, where SAP projects have historically struggled is where people move from one ERP to another. And what they expect to do is take their old processes and bring those old processes into the new system. So the old adage is, well, are you actually buying a new system, or are you just buying a new logo to log into? Does it just look like a new UX? And I think when you look at AI and you look at the hesitance and the cultural change with AI, they're very closely related in terms of, people will expect to keep on working in that same culture. Their expectations will be the same. So let's take a good example. Lots of organizations are looking at how they remove full-time staff or physical human resources and replace it with AI. But the expectation is that they're still human, right? They will still do, in fact, it's a superhuman because they expect the exact same things as the human used to do, but they'll never sleep, they'll never eat, they'll never take a sick day, and they'll be constantly obedient. Now, the reality is we all know, if we've all tried a bit of ChatGPT, the first prompt is never really the right one. The second prompt gets you a little bit closer, but you are consistently reiterating to get to where you want to be. Hence, prompt engineering is another big term that's landing at the moment. But, is the expectation, our expectation of what an AI agent will be, correct for the modern workplace? And if you take that ERP example, are we simply just taking our expectations of an old system and trying to put them into a new box? And is it taking a human and trying to put it into an AI box? And actually, the differences are very different. And this is why I think the age of the co-pilot has been so successful up until now, because it's been marketed correctly. It's not a replacement. It's a co-pilot for you to achieve a task. It's not a replacement for a human.
Like an assistant rather.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's this agentic AI piece that you just spoke about? Because I thought Copilot was an agentic AI.
Yeah. So we're living with a number of terms that are ultimately getting now a little bit confusing, and marketing is not helping in some of this because they interchange some of the wording. It's very hard to buy anything now, up until including a mobile phone, without being sold AI as part of what it is. So a bit like cloud, it's very rapidly losing any meaning. But right as we sit here today, there are a couple of terms that we are relatively comfortable with. The first one is AI in its basic form, which is an LLM, large language model. What that effectively is the mathematical calculator to predict what you're going to say. We then have generative AI, or Gen AI. Now, if AI, the first one, was really a research capability to be able to understand documents, make reasoning out of those, generative AI is designed for creativity. And we've seen this through DALL-E, for example. There's OpenAI's version. Google has a whole bunch of them. VO, for example, for video editing and creating of videos. They're creating some content. They're creating out something. And then we move on to agentic AI. And agentic AI is fundamentally a AI that should be a complement of all of those current AI capabilities, but enhanced even further. So a decision-making capability. That's probably as close to human being as we would want to at the moment think we can get to. And I use that wording very specifically. That it's the point where we think we want to get to, because I think anything beyond that becomes really scary.
But there were videos I saw, I don't know if this is true or not, but there's videos of people, agentic AI, building a travel plan for someone, right? It goes on Airbnb, picks the place, but that's agentic AI.
It's agent, so it's an agent, not agentic. So an agent at that point, you've given it a very straight set of instructions.
Right.
Now, ultimately, the idea of agentic AI is that its instruction piece has to be very minimal, and actually, you're talking outcome. So let's just say you're going on holiday and you want to use ChatGPT's agent function. Now, we've seen all the demos. We've seen Sam and the rest of the OpenAI team doing the demonstrations around book me a hotel, book me this, book me that. And that's exactly what they're saying. Book me a flight, book me a hotel, book me transfers, book me some activities to do while I'm there. You've instructed those three things. Theoretically, with agentic AI, I said, I just want to go on a trip. Get me somewhere I want to go.
Right.
And it's going, right, okay, Peter wants to go on a trip. Well, what do I have to think about? Well, I need to get him to the airport, so I need to book him a taxi. And then I need to get him into the airport. I know he likes traveling business class, but actually, I know the budget for that. I've checked his bank account. His budget says he can barely afford economy, so I'm going to book him there. Yeah. So what it should be doing is making some decisions about how it's getting to what it's going to get to. And it needs to use the data that it knows about you, or the data it knows about the subject it's working on, to be able to make those decisions. And agentic AI fundamentally should be able to reason why it's made those decisions. So versus the agent today, where if I say, go and find me a hotel, and I want these kind of key things about it, and it does that really clever web search thing where you start seeing it on the screen with the cursor, and it looks really quite cool, and it is, and it's not decrying it at all. I think it's quite cool, but you are still very much leading by instruction. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to use it quite extensively. And, I find myself constantly jumping in with it to fix a problem that it's run into. The best one being, are you a robot? Those catch.
What happens with that?
It seems to resist it. I've seen sometimes it will overcome it. Are you a robot tick box that comes up. And occasionally it will actually stop and say, you need to click this.
No way.
Yeah, it does. It seems to vary. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But the first couple of times it was like, please, can you click? I'm not a robot.
Wow. This agentic piece, I'm quite keen, but I'll come back to this because there's one thing that's going on in my mind because I work in tech recruitment, right? I want to stay ahead of the curve and make sure the market that I recruit in obviously is relevant in the next few years, right? You've seen tremendous amount of change in your career from a tech perspective, from, social cultural perspective, everything. Yeah. Let's say I was to give you a box to make predictions now for 5 years down the line, 2029, right?
Do I get anything if I get it right?
Yes. Come back to me in 5 years.
Great. Okay.
I'll make you
a millionaire.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, okay, great.
You have it on video now.
Yeah. You've heard it all first.
Yeah, but in terms of the roles itself, what IT roles will look different in 5 years from now?
So this is a great question. So I have an optimistic view and I have a pessimistic view. And I'll give you a little bit of the optimistic view to start with, and then I'll move to pessimistic. The optimistic view is that we can really move the industry forward, genuinely move the industry forward in that we can now start working on things that make material differences to businesses or the organizations we work for. One of the things that has fundamentally been the foundation of all AI to this point has been data. And comments below if you want to. If your organization has fixed data, let me know, because there's not an organization I know on the planet yet has data fully fixed. There's always issues with data quality, data structure, the way data is handled, the process of data management. Every organization, it's a continuous struggle. And I don't think I've worked with any organization, whether it be directly consultative or in any other form, which hasn't had some form of agenda around data to try and fix it. And the challenge is AI is pretty heavily reliant on data. It needs data fundamentally to make itself useful and capable. Today as a human, you bridge the gap really well between structured and unstructured data that you have available to you in your CRM, in your files that you may have in the office, versus what's in your head. And it could be things like processes. You join a company, you're doing the onboarding, you go, hey, how do I, maybe expense is the wrong one, but I'll use a good example. How do I claim an expense? And they go, oh yeah, so you have to put this piece of form in, you put this receipt in, you get it signed off by this person. Someone's probably telling you that. Most of the companies I've ever worked for, most of the time, the way I learn is not reading through a policy document, it's having a chat with someone and they say, yeah, you do this, this, and this. AI can't really do that. Well, it can ask a question, but fundamentally the principles of it is that it should be able to look in a resource of data, find all those policies and processes, and then be able to apply that effectively across the business. And again, for businesses that have invested in doing that, the next question is how much are you investing in maintaining it? And again, very few prioritize the investment or the reinvestment into those internal data sources.
Wait, just so I understand, what's the job titles that maintain data?
So effectively, I think the job titles that are going to change for AI specifically around data scientists, I think, are going to have a continuated role to play, understanding how to work with data and make some more sense of it. But I think they will use AI Copilot specifically to help them do that. I think you're going to have data modelers, data architects. These are all going to be roles, anything really around the data space. And I suppose the best way I could probably describe it back to you is this is the new oil age for computers. The days of going onto a rig to dig oil out of the ground is gone, but you will have guys sat mining databases trying to find how to make linkages between data that may not make any sense at all. That's your new oil. That's your new raw crude oil coming out of the ground. And as you refine it, it becomes into information. As you refine it further, it comes into knowledge. And that knowledge can then be applied into AI to make meaningful actions out the back of it.
So I want to break this down, right? Let's take my business, the business that I work for, as an example.
Yeah.
The data that you're talking about from let's give a time frame of the last 5 years, right? The 5 years of data that my business is collecting, how can I use that in the next 2 years with like an LLM or an AI model that will actually generate revenue? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
I just want to understand what the real life implications of this is.
And ironic, I'm going to answer it with two kind of answers here. The first one is that's a new business that people are starting up, right? There are a lot of companies out there who have been sold the idea of AI and have said, hey, look, I've invested in Copilot, I've invested in this, I've invested in that, but I'm not seeing any return on investment. How do I make AI useful? This is a genuinely brand new set of organizations who are opening up and making lots of money by making AI useful. So that's one. In your context, to a large extent, it's around what can you do with your data. What are you allowed to do with it? So today, I'm going to make some hypotheses, and you can tell me I'm right or wrong, but you've got a lot of personal information. You've got CVs, you've got date of birth, you've got things that could be deemed quite sensitive, salary information, job offers, all this kind of stuff. I'll guarantee you that your organization will have some sort of policies around how you manage that data. And that will be around where it can be physically stored, the clouds it can be set on, who should be able to access it, how long you're allowed to keep it for. So this is all really around data management. Now, once you start adding AI into that mix, does your current data policy permit the way that AI will use that data?
Right.
And there's your first question. So before you start talking about how am I going to make, give me my millions that you're offering me in 5 years' time, before you do that.
Wait, did I actually offer you?
You offered that. It's on some.
No,
I'm
going to get the editors to cut that off.
So in order for you to get me my millions, you're going to have to work out, does your current company policy allow AI to be processing that data? Because it's very possible that data will leave the country to go be processed in a data center outside the UAE or outside the Gulf or wherever it may be. That data then might even be, to some extent, anonymized. It may be used to train a natural language model. It may be used for other purposes other than the original intended purposes. Very famously, Zoom had to roll back a change that it made to its terms and conditions, saying that it would record every single one of its Zoom calls in order to train its AI, and it very quickly had to roll that back. So, we are seeing people's tolerances for what we're allowing this stuff to do and how much we're allowing to train other people's AI models. But in your world, and your role right now, you are very, very dependent on someone in your organization making a decision where they stand on AI. And that, to be honest, is where we probably come to the next job that you probably can make a lot of money on in the next couple of years.
Wait, what is it then?
That job is where you become an AI evangelist. And this is where you will be able to go and work with companies to make AI actually useful, and actually convert the marketing gimmicks that have been spread around AI and actually make it into something realistic. And I will give you a great example. When Power BI, Tableau all first came out several years ago, the age of reporting for lots of us seemed to change overnight. And we all seem to assume that we were all going to become Power BI developers. The reality is, some companies have embraced it really well and use it extensively. Others, use it really minimally because they don't train people on how to do it. I would suggest that AI is likely to go down the same path, but because investment levels in AI are so much more significant than they are in some reporting tools like Tableau or Power BI, you will find organizations that are willing to double down on investment for a human to come in to say, right, I have all of these tools. How do I plug them together? How do I make them make sense? And there are whole bunches of connectors now available. Probably one of the older ones I'm aware of is one called Zapier, for example, has more connectors than pretty much any other tool out there, and it connects various different systems together. N8N, which is again another automation system. I started playing that a couple of months ago. Again, incredible product, open source. So out of the box, it's free. You can host it yourself, or you can pay for it to be on a cloud. And these things help you then start making AI work better for you, because what people are buying generally are they're trying to buy a solution, but actually the back end of it's not there. So what you need to do is build all the back end infrastructure to make that AI really work well. Microsoft's done a pretty good job, I think, with Copilot. I think that where the track is, they're going down a nice road, because what they're trying to do is with Microsoft Copilot is bring in all of the organizational data. They're trying to bring in your email, your OneDrive, your SharePoint, and use that. And I think that's probably been one of the better examples I've seen of usable AI. But the more kind of just off-the-cuff AI products that have very little data sets or very little personalization to you or what your business, they have very limited change capability.
Just on this, right? Because what was it? What was N8N that you? I know the tool, but what's the connectors? You said, right? Connectors. Yeah. The reason why I'm bringing this up, one of my really good friends. He's doing this at the moment. He doesn't have a tech background at all. He's quite tech savvy, but he's not a developer. He can't read script, so to speak. I shared an example of you where I was trying to build the CV converter before, right? And it spit out a code and I couldn't make any sense of it and I gave it up. I'll come back to it. But with connectors coming in, do you think the role of an AI evangelist, can I become an AI evangelist?
Yeah. Yes. I think anyone right now who's genuinely interested in the topic and is willing to put the time in can become an AI evangelist. I think the limitation is your own belief of what you can do. And we're probably coming now really philosophical now, actually. We're probably going down a completely different road from tech. Ultimately, you can watch Tony Robbins and all the kind of various different motivators talk about how you change someone's perception of what they can and can't do. Why do people who walk high wires across 2 mountains able to do it? Yes, there is a physical element to it, but the mental strength required to be able to do that kind of stuff is huge. So a lot of it's around your own mental setup about how you tackle a problem. But if I consider what AI is today, AI is that equivalent tightrope. It is very complex, or it appears to be incredibly complex. I think it's about having a passion for doing it. And I've always believed that you're only good at things you're passionate about. I've generally found a genuine passion for AI in the last couple of years. I think in the last 12 months for me, AI has generally augmented from being a bit of a, hey, that's kind of cool, to being, yikes, I can really do something with this, right up to the point of saying, I can see even how I would start businesses or how I would start selling services to help people on the way to make that a reality. And I think you're seeing a lot of startup entrepreneurs doing the same thing. YouTube is littered at the moment with, stories of people who are starting small SaaS companies, literally having built them on Lovable, on Cursor, on code, Claude Code. And they're making, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month on repeated subscriptions. That generation of people, this generation's now here, and they're AI evangelists. They are ultimately flying the flag for AI really well because they're saying, well, actually, I've made my income, my future income is now based on the fact I managed to code without any previous coding knowledge, an application that people are paying me for.
But what if something breaks then? Let's take the example of a CV converter. I mean, for listeners that don't understand, very quick background. The way that our business produces CVs, or rather the end product of the CV looks, it's in a formatted way, right? We do it to ensure consistency, and it's Michael Page branded as a whole. So I had this pet project of converting, let's say, Peter's CV, for example, if I'm taking your CV, converting it directly into our Michael Page formatted CV without any human intervention. Because right now, humans do it. And the story I was talking about was creating a script to actually run that. And I used ChatGPT to create everything from the template to knowing where to put the placeholders. At one point, the ChatGPT even complimented me. It was like, oh, you're really thinking like a system architect. I was like, wow, really?
You paid extra for that, by the way. That's why you pay the premium subscription.
Yeah, exactly.
Compliments only come with a premium subscription.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, oh, you're thinking like a system architect. Good job, blah, blah, blah. We came to the end, and it obviously was like, look, am I ready to go create the script? I'm like, boom, I'm thinking, here it is. I'm making the money.
This is it. Again, that's how I'm going to pay Peter's millions.
Yeah, I'm almost going to call you in now. And I'll be like, Mike, we made it. The code comes out. The GUI looks quite good.
Yeah.
Presentable. I was like, wow, this looks good. Click it. It didn't work.
Yeah.
It didn't work. Problem was, I couldn't look at the script and be like, what's wrong? So I put it back into ChatGPT and I was like, look, this is not working. I did it a couple of times and then it just went off on this tangent and I couldn't reel it back in. But the point being is I'm stuck here now where I don't know how to debug code. I don't know how to read code. I actually don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So if that happens with a customer, what happens then? Like, I mean, how am I truly an AI evangelist? Am I simply not just someone that... am I not like a distributor, if that makes sense? I'm selling different products packaged in one.
Yeah. So I think there is those that. So let me see how I can debunk this a little bit. I think people who can write code will struggle more with the lack of control that a AI code generator has. There's almost is it doing as well as I could do it? Versus those that don't really code, have very little coding knowledge, are pretty much entirely reliant on the AI code generators making the code for them. So I think there's I always think that's a bit of an interesting mix between the two, and I've genuinely seen where coders will have the mistrust of the code developers because they think they can write it better, and I'm not going to argue either way. I think there's a little bit of both on both sides, and certainly depending on which code generator you're using, I think the quality can vary quite significantly.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But I still believe, and again, I think this comes back to the AI evangelist roles. When you learn how to prompt engineer, and prompt engineering is now a term which is gaining a lot more traction. Vibe coding got the same transaction a couple of months ago, but vibe coding now is becoming a teachable skill where you are providing structured commands into AI for your achievable outcomes. And it's not saying that your prompts weren't correct, but it's saying once you got into that kind of rabbit hole and you couldn't find your way through, prompt engineering is the difference between finding the light again and not.
Got you.
And being able to structure that conversation in a way that's outcome orientated, but with direct instructional commands of how you want it to go and react and what it does when it finds a problem. So that's where I think the skill's really coming in. And this is where I think you'll find the difference between an AI evangelist that's working with inside a business versus someone who uses AI as a co-pilot. They will use AI as a co-pilot, and they will likely use a lot more natural word language as we would do with you and I, maybe even slang terminology to some extent, shorthand, if you're in, using acronyms or whatever, versus a prompt engineer who will probably never use an acronym. They will have sentence constructed in a very particular kind of way. They'll use good English as they write it to make sure whatever the LLM is using in terms of its language, but use good structured grammar and vocabulary in order to describe the problem or the outcome that they want the LLM to handle.
Wow. So going back then, controversial question, what IT roles or skills for that matter are not going to be relevant in 5 years?
Not relevant. Wow. So
can you actually make a realistic prediction with that?
I think it's difficult at the moment. I don't think it's roles will be irrelevant. I think it's that roles will develop differently. And, this comes back down to all the industrial revolutions that we've had over our years. This has been quoted as another industrial revolution, for example, with the age of AI. I think roles are going to adapt and change. I think in tech, it's a bit of an interesting one. There is still a nervousness about letting full control out. I say that having seen the news of the job cuts at various different large software manufacturers. I think recently Satya Nadella, from Microsoft, kind of came out and said, look, a majority of the code that we now make is through AI. And I think there is absolutely, these organizations would be stupid not to venture down that road and start leveraging it. The question is will their business models allow them to continue down that trail? That will be time to tell. And I think we need to divide that between your thoroughbred tech companies like your Microsoft versus your retailers or your manufacturers or traditional companies that use technology to further the business. I think those organizations will be a bit further down the line before they really start cutting their IT departments. I think the big impact, and we've seen some of this already, is where we see consultancies. And I think the age of the consultant coming into IT may change quite a bit. I think and I'll use that specifically from your big four consultancies as an example. Tech strategies. I wrote an article recently around tech strategy. And a large portion of the organization I know have brought in big four consultants to help them write their tech strategies. But the big four consultancies are using information that's already in the org to help build that. It's mainly a business plan, or it's mainly, objectives or vision or mission statements that they use to help structure what that technology plan looks like, that tech strategy. I think what you'll find is that information gathering piece will probably be replaced with AI. And you'll help pull that together. And then, a human, a CIO, a CTO will still be in that creation stage of building the plan and the strategy together. So I think that's where you'll see some of the major kind of key differences.
It's a good point you bring, because in my head, the tech strategy and the documents and stuff that the consulting houses create, my assumption is based on principles and frameworks that have already been built, and it's essentially tailoring it to your organization, correct?
So yes and no. I would say that's probably true for enterprise architecture. So enterprise architecture definitely sits in that category of frameworks and good practice. For me, a good IT good IT strategy is a branch of a business strategy, a business plan. I wrote an article recently, and in the article, I've kind of dissected where I've seen personally IT strategies go wrong, and it's when they're written in isolation. It's when they're written in isolation of the business. Fundamentally, a good IT strategy should read, how does the business achieve its outcomes? What are the technologies? What are the strategies that will be employed by the technology organization in order to drive the business objectives forward? And that really, to some extent, there is still a creative element to that writing. There's still very much a creative problem-solving part to that writing, which I don't think AI is quite there yet with. I think it can make great suggestions. I think it can be a great co-pilot, and that's kind of what I say in the article. It's a fantastic co-pilot to help you think of it. But that creative streak, that problem-solving streak, and it is problem-solving. Most tech strategies are a problem-solving document to a business issue. You need to have that little bit of creativity to be able to diagnose how you're going to get the business strategy delivered using technology.
So that for now, it's a very good point you made. So that only a human can do that, correct?
I think at the moment it needs a human influence, yes.
Okay. So let's say hypothetically in 30, 40 years, AI, or what we think AI is going to be at that time, can do this. What happens? What does society look like then?
I think it looks a bit of a scary place, actually. And that's coming from someone who likes AI. I say it's a scary place because there is a little bit of, in business, certainly, there's always a human element. Businesses employ people. Businesses are a genuine drive for good for most parts. They want to, yes, there is a profit machine for shareholders or whoever it may be, but ultimately they keep people employed, they keep people fed, they keep people educated. They're generally good for society as a whole. I think the less people we employ in businesses and the more automated that we get, maybe takes a little bit of the humanity out of a business. And I think it's differentiator, and it may go the complete other way. And this is where I see 30 years time goes. You may see actually, businesses that say, actually, we don't use AI. We don't use artificial intelligence. We are humans and we are going to build things. And I go to the car industry as a great example.
Oh my God, yeah.
When was the last time that, you bought a really, really expensive car because it was built by a robot? You buy a really, really expensive Ferrari or Aston Martin or a McLaren because there's a guy who's been building these cars for 20 years with his own two hands and the leathers, the sewn and everything else. All this can be automated today, right? A car production, Tesla's pretty much entirely automated, if I understand correctly. Sewing car seats can pretty much entirely automated. Yeah, these supercar manufacturers, these really prestigious brands, actually sell the fact that they're handmade.
Watches,
great example.
But just going back to then, because what I'm trying to understand here, you made a comment earlier saying AI is mathematics.
Yeah.
It solves problems. It's in my head as well. It's very binary, 0, 1. Yeah. How can it actually become that from solving mathematical problems? Does that make sense? As in, hear me out.
It's a great question. Yeah.
How can something actually have emotion in 20 years? How can something make? Because even then, it's going to be mathematical decisions, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is where the rise of the agents, and that sounds like a film, doesn't it? The rise of the agents. It's where, and it's a question I think has been asked for a long time. And Anthropic, who were the creators of Claude, they came up with a concept called MCP, which effectively is an add-on which an AI can use to access resources. So in its very simple format, imagine it's like the arms for AI. It has the ability to use APIs to connect to other systems. It has the ability to do indexing of information. It can use specific PDFs, Word docs, whatever it may be. The MCP effectively becomes an extension of ARMS and a doer capability. Think of the LLM as an orchestrator. The MCP effectively is the hands to make something happen. So, in your example, that's where an LLM or a ChatGPT can genuinely now become functional and make something happen. And the earliest elements of that is home automation. So we've been playing with home automation for years, right? I've got Nest in my house and I can remotely turn things up. And it's got a learning capability. So I'm at the house, it turns the thermostat up and down. All that's doing is signals, right? Turn thermostat on, turn thermostat off. What LLMs can do is orchestrate that. So based on certain conditions, it will turn thermostats on and off. And that's effectively what an MCP is. It has the capability of doing things and changing things and making something happen with a command from an LLM.
Wow. You've obviously been networking with quite a few tech leaders in this space.
Yes. And ChatGPT. I talk to ChatGPT endlessly. Very understanding. Never gets bored of me. Just say I have to pay it more. But
How much do you pay now?
$20,
Okay,
which I think is really interesting given the fact of how much you get from it. And,
what do you mean? In terms of
value?
Yeah.
I definitely get my value out of it. Let's put it that way. I mean, I think they make a loss on me.
I think they make a loss on everyone, right? I think you've told me about the mathematics.
The mathematics don't make sense, and that's the other problem with it. That's the other problem with it at the moment. It's incredibly good with cash in the terms of investment is fruitful. You can get investment for pretty much most AI kind of products these days. And if you happen to be a senior researcher, senior engineer, or any of those kind of high-level titles from any of the big AI companies today, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, Perplexity, any of those kind of guys, you can probably go out, set up your own company, and within at least a few days, you'll have a couple of investors ready to give you millions of dollars to support you, because no one wants to miss out. And I think the problem with that is that the actual mathematics of the business of AI is still yet to be fully worked out.
That's just how startups, PPE firms work, right? But it's a good for people like us because we get it for cheap. But as a tech leader, how does that affect you? Because let's say you are automating a process.
Yeah.
Hypothetical example, you're automating XYZ. Right now, it costs very little to do that because the LLMs are cheaper. Overall, everything is relatively subsidized, right? Do you take into account what happens in the next 6 years when for some reason it's not subsidized anymore and the costs skyrocket, and then you're thinking, wait, I should have just let it stay the same way because it wouldn't have costed as much. Do you see where I'm going with this?
I think what you've just described is every SaaS provider that's ever made profit in this technical world. Look, and again, that example that you've just talked about is how pretty much most of the large SaaS companies have handled their licensing for years. The first year that you buy your SaaS product, we'll keep names out of it, not to offend anyone, but the year that you buy your SaaS product, it's the honeypot number. It's this is too unreal to be cheap. It's incredibly cheap. And you sign up and you use the product and you think the product is great and your business can't live without this product now.
Yeah.
And then it comes to software renewal time and you're like, well, I'm glad it's so cheap because, I've put investments in all these other things. And then your software renewal comes in and it's 3 times what you paid. And the companies will say, but we added this feature, this feature, this feature. And you go, but I never use any of those features. I used the original features. Can I just have those features? No, we're an evergreen solution. So therefore, you pay for these features regardless of whether you use them or not.
That's the Black Mirror episode.
That happens. I have probably been in multiples of those conversations in my term and tenure as a technical leader, where I've had to have really difficult conversations with vendors about the cost of their renewals. And the reality is they're never easy conversations, and sometimes they go the way you want them to, sometimes they don't, sometimes there is no middle ground, and you have to make some really difficult choices, and the business has to make some really difficult choices about what they're going to do. I think contracting has come much better now. We're able now to contract and put a little bit of protection in around those kind of renewals. But that's taken a few years to get to that point where lawyers are savvy enough to put those guide rails in. Because when SaaS first started coming out, and even cloud first started coming out, contracts lagged in terms of the terminology and what risks they should put in to guard against. Whereas now, because it's so well known, cloud is a really well known entity, it's not new anymore, SaaS is not new. Lawyers have caught on to saying, yeah, these are some of the rules and restrictions we need to put in to make sure that we guarantee what the renewal caps are going to be. But we are now back in the same age with AI as what we were when SaaS really first started hitting the market. People don't know how to contract for it yet. And because it is all still so new, even the AI companies that are selling this are kind of going, well, yeah, we know how we're modeling it right now. We'll figure out that later on down the line. There's a great book called Blitzscaling, if anyone's ever read it, and basically it's the concept of being able to generate a business at incredible speed with really not worrying too much about money, bottom line, whatever. You're effectively at that point burning cash, and once you get to a certain peak, that's when you then trim everything out. And I think a lot of those startup companies which start a blitz scaling type of model, and you probably see a lot of AI companies in that world, that's where you'll probably see a lot of them kind of start either needing a lot more steadying investment to keep them going, or they'll have to change business models quite rapidly.
For disruption to happen of any nature, for me, this is the only way we can disrupt in tech. If we continuously pour in money into research, into R&D, everything we've got into one specific thing, it grows.
Yeah.
Is that actually true? Is that obviously why people are doing this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, look, ultimately, investors aren't putting money in this for the good of their health. They expect a return on investment. I think there are a few investors that know what the risks are. I think there are other investors that have seen FOMO and just want to be part of something and hope that actually it will turn out good in the end. I think there are a couple of very savvy investors who understand exactly which markets they should play and which ones they shouldn't. But if we go back to probably one of the most infamous recent kind of investment stories, FTX. FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, on full appearance appeared to be a total kind of numbers guy, knew this market, knew what he was doing. Alameda Research was the first kind of company to set up. Then they set up FTX as a kind of almost supporting organization. Then people got really excited about FTX. The marketing of FTX accelerated that. They had celebrities, they had all of these big names backing FTX, and the money just kept coming in. And then suddenly, and it wasn't ironically FTX, it was that kind of bit of a bubble stumble in the kind of crypto market that suddenly investors went, how safe is our money? And they started calling back loans. And then suddenly when they couldn't call back the loans, because obviously FTX had done something maybe not entirely right with the money that they had from their client accounts, that's suddenly how FTX unraveled really, really quickly. And it's a fascinating story. And I think, people who don't make that linkage between what happened with FTX and the AI investment market at the moment, I think there's a bit of caution there. I don't think they're as too dissimilar as what people might think they are. I think there's a few threads of truth between both of those, because FTX was riding on the high of what crypto was. There appeared to be lots of people on Instagram, on TikTok, crypto millionaires walking around making legitimately good money out of it. So, but again, it comes back to what we said earlier before. The knowledge and the understanding of how crypto really works is a bit of a myth to some people. It's very complex. Some people understand it really well. Some people don't. The ones that understand it really well are making millions out of it. The ones that don't lose the millions.
A lot of people compare this to the dot-com bubble.
Yep.
Can you compare it to anything before that time? Has there been any other major incident where this can be compared to?
Yeah, look, I think there's been so many trends in technology. Certainly, cloud, I think for one, is a great example. And if we look at what's happening in cloud market today,
So I know before the dot-com bubble.
before the dot-com bubble, no, I don't think to this velocity. I mean, there probably has been, but not that I would understand, at least anyway. I think a lot of what we've seen post the dot-com bubble has been the systemic boom of that and the perpetuation that we never really learned after it. We've just tried to redo something different.
Speaking of what we were just speaking of, what is AI ethics?
AI ethics, in a nutshell, it's what we feel comfortable that we should allow AI to do.
Okay. So as a user, should I be worried about AI ethics?
Yes.
But
Yes.
in what sense though?
Because AI ethics is effectively governing what happens with that AI that you're using. So I'll give you a really good example. I have been party to a AI ethics case several years ago around an international healthcare company based in the United States. And what they wanted to do was use the vital care monitors in a hospital to train AI into looking at where you may see predictable patient outcomes and help to prevent those. And a lot of the concern around using that data was how that data would be processed, and a lot of it's around anonymous. It was going to be anonymized. It wasn't going to be specific. But then how would it be actionable afterwards? And the idea being that theoretically using vital care mods, you might be able to early predict someone with a cardiac arrest before they show visible symptoms of a cardiac arrest or a stroke. Because obviously, your body, as you're about to go through one of those kind of very life-changing moments, your body starts doing things that may be preparing or unpreparing your body for what's about to come next. And, you and I right now, we might not see that with our eyes, but underneath the surface, pulses, blood pressure and all that could potentially predict that. So the AI was designed, or the machine learning as it was being predicted at that time, was designed to try and identify when those instances may occur. Now, here is the interesting part of that story. AI ethics pretty much said, no, don't do it. Weird, right? You can save someone's life. You can predict someone's going to have like a heart attack or a stroke. Is that not a good thing? I'd want that. If I was about to have a stroke and someone could tell me 10 minutes before I was about to have it and be in the right place, that'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
So the question is, why did AI ethics say it was a bad thing? Well, the reason is because it came to the human element. I want you to be a doctor for a moment. I want you to feel the years of medical research that you'd studied for 20, 30 years. And you walk in and your hospital director tells you, right, you've now got this AI companion set on your iPad. And it's going to tell you when a patient in any of the wards that you're looking after is likely to have a heart attack. And, our idea is that you can go and be near them and make sure you can assist and help either prevent or at least mitigate the event that happens. Okay. So let's just say you as that doctor then have a bit of a decision to make. You're in a ward, you're looking after 20, 30 patients, whatever it may be. And the AI flags to say, hey, patient 12, looking a bit dodgy. The AI is recommending you go to their bedside because they're about to go and have a heart attack. But your years of medical knowledge, and you're looking at your ward and you're saying, okay, you're saying patient 12, but actually I'm worried about patient 6. Patient 6, in all your years of medical knowledge, and you've studied every book there is known that you could do. You've got years of research, colleagues, CPD, everything. You've done everything. But you think patient 6 is the problem, not patient 12. Here's your decision as a doctor. Do you take your years of medical knowledge and everything you trust in your gut to say to go and stand by patient 6 and think that actually patient 12, which you don't agree with the AI, you don't believe the AI is correct, and so therefore you stand by patient 6, and patient 12 actually does have a heart attack or whatever? And then they come back and ask you that question, why did you not listen to the AI? Why did you think you were better than the AI? Or, even worse, flip it the other way. Let's just say you did go to patient 12, but it wasn't patient 12 that had the heart attack. It was patient 6, the one you knew that would have it. But all your resources were with patient 12 that actually was fine because the AI made a mistake, or it didn't calculate it correctly. Or it was even better, a dodgy sensor, which is always on the back of, it's a dodgy sensor that's basically flicked the wrong recording. So that patient then has a cardiac arrest, they're in a bad state, and you're called back in. Why did you not go and see them? Why did you not go and help? Why were we? Oh, I was working with the AI. But you're a doctor. You've got years of medical knowledge. You should have been over there. There was no point in that scenario where you as a doctor would be in a good place. You were going to be blamed whichever way you did it. You were hoping luck would get you next to the person you needed to be next to when the bad thing happened. And that's why, from an AI ethics perspective, there is a question on where AI should make influences on decisions. And these are decisions that we're battling with constantly at the moment. You drive a self-driving car. You are not paying attention because the car's driving itself. Why are you going to? And then a situation occurs where the car is going to run into someone. It's either the mother with the pram. If you've ever seen The Naked Gun, God, think of it like the Naked Gun. It's either the mother with the pram or it's the old guy in the wheelchair. And the brakes aren't working, and it's going to have to hit one of them. Which one's it going to hit?
I know mathematically what it'll choose.
If you've seen iRobot in Will Smith, we all know which one it picks. So these are AI ethics, and this is what fundamentally builds the construct for what we understand as acceptable usage of artificial intelligence and those mathematical predictions. Because remember, if everything was as simple as mathematics and physics, we'll be a really simple place. Our healthcare system would be very simple. The NHS in the UK, for example, if it used mathematical calculations based on investment of who it was going to give treatment to, it'd be really quick, right? Basically, right, you're old, right? We're not going to give you anything. You're young. You've got years of tax paying to do. We're going to save your life because you'll make us a lot more money in the future. That's a very callous way of looking at AI, right? That's a mathematical calculation.
Yeah.
You're old. Your usable days of paying tax and giving back to society are over. This person who's in the mid-30s in a high-paying job, paying lots of tax, is in a much better position to keep the economy going. Let's pile our money into that person because they will be better for society. And remember, AI is going to think of it that way. AI is going to think of the wider picture. Is it wrong?
Yeah, who gets to decide that?
There's your ethics. That's where your ethics come in straight away. So these are the foundation ground rules of where AI ethics sit in, and these questions have been around for a very, very long time. And I'll give you a really good final example. A great story that I love is around Alan Turing and the code breaking of the Enigma cipher. And code breakers at Bletchley Park were working tirelessly to try and break the Enigma code that the Germans were using. And they eventually figured it out. They knew how to decipher it. And a guy called Tommy Flowers, who for me is the unsung hero of the World War II, built something as what we know as Colossus. And Colossus is what many regard as the first digital computer. It was powered by hundreds of vowels that allowed Colossus to be able to decrypt German codes within hours rather than days. It was directly accountable for the success of the D-Day landings. It was, and this is what it was given, but they couldn't let it out that they knew what the Germans were saying. So even though they had all the communications that the Germans were making between the different, ships and battles, they couldn't act on all of them, because if they acted on every single one, the Germans would have known they cracked the code.
Right, okay.
So there were men and women who died because even though we knew the code had been cracked and we knew what the Germans were going to do, and there was going to be a bombing raid, or there was going to be a shipping lane that was going to be attacked, they couldn't act on it, because if they did, the Germans would have known the code was busted. And there's an ethical question right there for you. Do you act and save the ship, or stop the Luftwaffe coming into London on that night that bombs and kills a couple of hundred people? with the risk that if you did prevent that, the Germans would know, and therefore you might lose the war, which would result even more casualties. And if that was AI today, making that decision, what decision would it make? And I think this is where AI has come at the right time in our world, where I think we're a lot more educated in terms of our ethical standards, what we've been, in generations to come, or we more so in more years. But, if we look back at those times, we would have maybe looked at AI to make that decision for us. Which bombing raid should we stop versus which one should we let happen? What's an acceptable amount of, message to intercept that doesn't let it on, that we know what they're talking about. And like I said, the D-Day landings were the change in the war. The D-Day landings were what made the difference between winning and losing in Second World War. But it was only because they only dealt with the signals they knew they would deal with that made the D-Day landings possible and ultimately ended the war.
Powerful. It's just you feel so small when you listen to these stories because you have no power almost. And I feel like this is what I see society as, because I asked you a question before and we spoke offline about this. With all of these advancements, when do we as humans actually stop striving for something new or something better, innovation for that matter? It's a good look. I don't think we need a part 2 for this anyway. I'm sure we have a lot to discuss, but I guess we leave it with that ethical dilemma. But Peter Jamieson, thank you very much for joining us, and it's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
We'll definitely have a version 2.
Well, I'm expecting my check.
It's cut already.
Is it? Good.
It's cut in the edits.
So it's on the back. Oh, no. I thought you said the check was cut.
No.
I should get that thing in advance, clearly. Yeah.
But thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Appreciate it. Thank you.